Hey everyone, welcome back to the YOUnify podcast. If you're new here, my name is Brandyn Keating. I'm the co-founder and CEO of YOUnify, a nonprofit organization helping you flourish and thrive, and I'm also the host of our podcast. I'm really excited today to have Evan Dutmer with us. Evan, of course, is one of the contributors to our Leadership for Flourishing edited volume that we talk about a lot here on the podcast. And he also holds a PhD in ancient philosophy from Northwestern University and teaches ethics and leadership at Culver Academies, one of the few boarding schools in the country with an entire department dedicated to leadership, established in 1986. He's the author of the newly published Cicero's New Leadership, a co-author, as I mentioned, of Chapter 12 in Leadership for Flourishing, and is currently a distinguished visitor at Notre Dame's History of Philosophy Forum. He has presented at over 30 conferences and written more than 20 peer-reviewed articles. And he does all of this not in a university, but in a high school classroom. Welcome, Evan. It's so great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Brandyn. It's so good to see you. It was just amazing seeing you at Harvard this year at the Harvard Human Flourishing Summit in March. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, always wonderful to get to see each other in 3D, especially with our other colleagues focused on flourishing. So, Evan, we went through a little bit of your very impressive background and this area that you focus on, ancient philosophy. And I'm curious, just to start off, what was young Evan like? How did you become you? How did you become this guy who wanted to become an expert in ancient philosophy and do that at a boarding school?
Amazing question. So my journey, as most people's journeys, has been a bit circuitous. So I actually, as far as like something that people find usually pretty surprising, because they're very interested, like what did the high school Evan look like? I will say reading came along very early. That I was drawn to reading. I was seeking out pretty much anything I could read. However, in high school, I was very, very interested and excited about playing bass in my high school punk bands. So
punk band.
In punk band. So for those listening who know anything about my time playing bass in Chicago area punk and emo bands, the fans of Suburban Decay and Navy and Sin are out there. So
I love this.
That was my high school. That was a big part of my high school. But at the same time in high school, it was also where I discovered, really, in many ways, like I think like a lot of young people, through things like my English classes, I was drawn to Thoreau and Emerson and Melville. And I was so fascinated about these authors that they would reference. And I wanted to know who they were talking about. When they were talking about a Plato or an Aristotle, I was like, well, who, like, I don't know. What do they think? I want to know more. I'm curious. Like, they reference all these people, but I don't know what they said or what they meant. So, and so it just led into a deeper interest. And then ultimately, I think actually my first couple texts in ancient philosophy are Plato's Republic and also Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, two kind of classic texts. And then actually Cicero, very early on, I came across Cicero's what's called On Duties. And I think what I was so struck by in all of them was this perspective of self-development, that I could get better, that I could try to lead with virtues, that I could, like, when it was this idea of like, oh, I could maybe become more courageous. And that's what life is going to be about, is like an unfolding path of learning how to become who you are. And as it makes sense. Like that's really, really gripping to you in your teenage years, and so it just kind of stuck with me and it stayed with me ever since.
We will definitely get more into your scholarship. And I love this perspective on the unfolding of who we are becoming and that we can cultivate that. But I really need to know more about this punk band. So I have two questions. One is, what was the name of the punk band? And two is, Are there photos of Evan with a mohawk?
To answer the first one, not with a mohawk. However, there are photos. There's photos from some of our great shows. And as you might imagine, for my high school students, those are heavily sought after and have a high currency. They are very interested in these photos. And even for them, they're just excited about like how great, because they're like old cell phone photos and stuff. And so they absolutely love it. But then, so the band I was in was called Suburban Decay. I'm not sure exactly where, it's a name that you see all over the place, but one of the band members said they actually saw it on like a makeup brand or something. So that's awesome. And it eventually became Navy and Sin. And then there was like a band breakup and everything. It was great. So,
oh, wow. Lots of drama. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that your next book finds a way to weave this in any event. Now the pictures are also highly sought by me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your students. You are at a boarding school teaching high schoolers, and certainly you could be at a university with your background if you were so inclined. So I'm curious about what made you choose the high school setting, and do you ever have to, sort of explain that choice to people?
Yeah. So in so many ways, it was just a very interesting process for me. As you might imagine, entering into the PhD program at Northwestern, the expectation is that you'll ultimately teach at a university. And that was my expectation as well. It was, again, that kind of idea of like unfolding experiences, listening to what your life is telling you. And so for me, what really struck me in my research, in my time at Northwestern was, you have these, two great responsibilities of teaching and research as an academic. And I really, really liked teaching. I loved it. I found it so energizing, so exciting. I loved working with young people. I found it really centering and just felt like it gave me this really beautiful rhythm to my day and put me in service to others and just all these really good things. And so it was interesting to kind of watch that happen. And even some of my mentors at Northwestern were kind of noting it. They're like, you really like teaching. That's not always what academics do. They sometimes dread it, and they really like it. And so I started opening myself up to like, I kind of wanted to just like play around with ideas in my mind of like, I think there's a lot of different ways I could be a teacher to people. And I was interested in small liberal arts colleges. I was interested in research, driven kind of positions, but I was opening myself to community college. And I just loved the mission of community colleges. I lived in Chicago at the time, and the city colleges in Chicago. I just like was so drawn to what they were doing. I had a chance to teach community college, like online courses for a course for a community college in Northwest Illinois. And then it kind of, again, unfolding experiences. I was doing my teacher certificate at the Northwestern Searle Center for Advancing Teaching and Learning. And they have a program, or they did at the time I was at Northwestern, where you could teach one class at the local public high school, Evanston Township High School. And I just thought that was so interesting. And I was like, I don't know, I want to give it a try. I'll just like see how it goes. And it was really cool because they gave you a lot of curricular autonomy and things. And it was a total elective class for students. And so I taught this class called An Introduction to Philosophy Through Socrates. Oh. And I absolutely loved it. I think what I realized really quickly is I tell a lot of other people about my career path now is like, high school seniors, for better and for maybe worse on the side of like college instructors, is like, they're not that different from college freshmen, So in a sense, I had more kind of practice and ability with the age range than I thought. And I just really loved the class. And then I knew nothing about boarding schools. I had gone to public schools my whole life, public high school. But there's a teacher placement agency called Carney Sandeau. They came to for independent and like boarding high schools, and they came to Northwestern and did an info session. I went, and they were talking about these schools that needed people teaching Latin, teaching ethics, and things like that. I was like, well, that's what I'm doing, and that's what I want to teach at a college. But what was so special and so amazing about Culver is when I first started, I was teaching when I was first teaching at Culver. I taught both Latin and ethics, and so for 4 years I
Oh.
was teaching Latin. So it's just like perfectly in my research area. Plus, I was teaching this ethics course that's designed for our leadership education program. So it just and then in all sorts of ways, boarding schools have something of that collegiate feel and. The way the students are all living there and working together to build something really special.
Yeah, and Culver Academies is distinctive. I understand that students are required to take a leadership course every year. They graduate with over 1,500 hours of hands-on leadership experience, and there's an entire department dedicated to leadership education, as we mentioned at the top, going all the way back to 1986. So what is it like for you to teach in an environment that is so intentionally built around developing character?
It's really special, honestly, and in many ways unparalleled. It's kind of what brought me to Culver and what has helped sustain me there. I think what's really special too, and we'll kind of get to this later in our discussion, is that there's the student life programming we have, there's the Department of Leadership Education, there's all sorts of ways that the academics support and develop character and leadership. But we also have just a really, what I think of as just really important kind of founding principles that really help to like orient all that in the right way. So we have cardinal virtues and Culver values, and really those cardinal virtues of courage, justice, moderation, and wisdom. I find those so powerful for really, as I said, like orienting all that programming to the good. There's
Yeah.
just a real sense in this community of like, how are we going to support the good in whatever we do? So it's not just learning perseverance and curiosity and perspective to, in a sense, just maximize utility or something. But it's really oriented around like, how do I help the community be better? How do I support those around me? How do I cultivate my character so that I'm in a better place to serve those around me? In a sense too, to be a better like character coach that can help other people actually develop their character. And what's really special, what's really amazing about Culver, as I said, is that in a sense, it's just amazing. We have in addition to that kind of like 1,500 hours of like kind of like maybe like formal instruction, we have all of the informal and formal instruction happening in a student life curricula. They're learning leadership in teams and in very kind of specific, discrete groups. But
Wow.
then they're also doing just a lot of like actual like classroom leadership learning where we can talk about leadership theory and practice. Really, as you said, like a really a strong and intentional emphasis on character and really practical tools for improving character too. So we used the 7 strategies developed at Wake Forest and the Oxford Character Project as well. So helping young people think about character as something that they can practice and improve. That reflection is also absolutely key to developing our character. This is also going to improve their leadership in so many ways. That the research actually shows really, really clearly that actually like friends are one of the best ways for us to both develop our character, but also like hinder our character and our development, like finding the right kinds of people who lift us up and help us kind of activate our potential and become who we are. And also just the absolutely critical role of like role models and exemplars. And that's like this amazing. I think what's so powerful too, I love, is that it's so great for me to be able to have these resonances between things that maybe like initially drew me in to these ideas and then getting to share it with young people now. Like, for example, like Aristotle talks over and over again about the importance of role models and exemplars. He calls them moral paragons, right?
Yeah.
It's powerful to then be able to share with young people now, like, no, the research also shows, the empirical research shows, like, it is absolutely critical for you to have some like ordinary and some extraordinary exemplars, people who help give you hope that like, yeah, you can be courageous, you can be
Yeah.
just, you can be moderate, you can be wise, you can do this. And so, it's just a really special opportunity. I can talk all sorts of things about it. So anything about it, curious about, I can dig into.
Beautiful. Well, and especially now when young people are struggling so much with isolation and loneliness and screen time, I think it's really beautiful that not only do you consider character development to be almost like a muscle, like, that's part of what I hear in what you're saying. It's almost like, you're so intentionally teaching the young people how they can cultivate their character, not just in isolation, but with their peers and with mentors. It's really beautiful and necessary at this moment in our world. So tell us about your honors seminar in the theory and practice of leadership. You've described teaching it the same way that you taught at Northwestern. And what does that actually look like with high school students?
Yeah, so it's another kind of a real place of joy for me at Culver. So because of that foundation, the students have, in a sense, living out leadership roles, and then also having at that point already 3 years of kind of formal leadership education, leadership studies instruction. At the senior level, we can offer something called our honor seminar in the theory and practice of leadership. And it is a capstone kind of academic seminar modeled on kind of like a liberal arts course or a liberal arts kind of capstone at a small liberal arts college or certainly at another university. And so when I say that I teach it as I would at Northwestern, it means that in a sense, like kid gloves are off. We just dive right into the resources and the research, and I am constantly trying to uplift young people that they can do this, and that we're all part of this together. We often, depending on the actual classroom I get, often will be in something of either like a seminar table or actually like a really cool kind of smaller kind of like college lecture classroom.
Nice.
But so it also helps them feel like it's a different kind of space.
Yeah.
But when I say that I teach it as I did at Northwestern too, is that I expect them to join the field. That's what I always, when I was at Northwestern, I think what was so uplifting for me is when my instructors helped me see that I was coming into a conversation, that I was going to be joining other scholars talking about these ideas. And so I try to balance like both respect for expertise, but also not getting too far into reverence. Like it's okay to like challenge and push back on things. And ultimately is that they develop really something like a kind of mini dissertation thesis. They defend it at the end of the term with the rest of the Department of Leadership Education, other members of the campus community. And so I think that just that sense of having to do a really, in one way or another, kind of like high stakes performance at the end, it really helps them feel proud of what they did. It also helps them also, as I said, kind of feel like they're entering into that community of scholars. So I treat it kind of like, as I said, like kind of like a mini thesis defense or something. So it's pretty powerful at the end. We get to celebrate them. I get to shake their hand, and they've done something really special. And they write 20 to 25 page academic report. To do that, we have kind of conferencing all throughout the term. So in a sense, there's like a little bit of like an Oxford tutorial kind of style going on too. So yeah, it's really, really special. And I would say again, I really do think it's uniquely possible for them based on how much leadership experience they've had. They're able to dig into the research and the scholarship so much more quickly than certainly, I'll just say, I feel like for me, where I was in high school, more concerned about, bringing my band together. I feel like they're a little bit further along.
Yeah, what an amazing experience for them to have and such beautiful preparation for anything in life. So let's dive into your new book, Cicero's Leadership. Congratulations on that. Very exciting. And so the book argues that Cicero is an important and underappreciated predecessor to modern leadership theory. So can you say more about the case for that assertion? Why Cicero? Why now?
Yeah. So, I mean, in so many ways, this is, as I said, connects back to, say maybe my initial connections to leadership theory, leadership studies, philosophy.
Hmm.
Um, Cicero, in I think what I was really struck by was that with someone like Cicero, the way in which he is able to speak to some of the just really foundational kind of truths of leadership
Hmm.
really stood out to me as I was learning more and more about leadership studies. And in particular, as I talk about a lot in the book, really in many ways held to be like the founder of contemporary leadership studies, James McGregor Burns.
Yeah.
He talks about a leadership that is by nature uplifting, that it's
Mm.
mutually elevating, that it's bi-directional, and in particular that he talks so deeply about the absolutely critical role of ethics and morality in leadership that that makes leadership one of the hardest things about the human experience, but it
Hmm.
also makes it clarifies just what the stakes are in leadership. And I think what I was so struck by with Cicero is the way in which he similarly is living in a time where kind of questions of leadership are just brought to the fore about
Hmm.
who are good leaders, how should we lead one another. Is leadership just about success and having completed something and having done something? Or does it have a deeply moral component? And Cicero is watching, say, ultimately like kind of authoritarian rise of Julius Caesar, and he's
Hmm.
constantly throughout calling us back to a different vision of leadership. And so I call it Cicero's New Leadership, the book,
Yeah.
because that aligns with actually there's this leadership scholar, Alan Bryman, who called Burns' vision kind of new leadership. This idea, but it's new and very old. And interestingly, Cicero also says that living 2,000 years ago, ancient Roman statesperson and philosopher, and he says he's talking about the way that he's trying to lead in this way that's like
Hmm.
centered on ethics and values and ultimately the flourishing of the republic. And he's contrasting it to what he's seeing in, say, someone like Caesar or Pompey or something like that, these other kind of figures at the time. But he also views it as something that he thinks the very best leaders of Rome, of like at his time, even ancient Rome, that they led
Yeah.
the way. And um, so what I do in the book is I set this stage of ways in which Cicero is keying in at what I think are just like foundational pictures of what good
Hmm.
leadership really is, which is that it's centered in virtues and that's centered in the flourishing of communities and others. That's actually just what leadership really is truly about. And then I connect it to all of this work happening in transformational leadership theory of the last 50 years or so.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, he anticipates it, he connects deeply with it. He also, though, clearly is proto-transformational. So that's actually a big
Hmm.
part of the point of the book too. Is that I actually think it's really important to, if maybe going back to that, my earlier point too, is
Hmm.
to not get too far into reverence.
Mm.
That we want to be careful. Like ancient Roman society is a really complex and in some ways like horrifying society. It's an ancient slave society, right? So I want to be really clear that we don't go too far into that reverence side and not able to talk it through.
Yeah, it sounds
But
like we can take some nuggets to pull forward that are relevant today, while at the same time being critical of, or uh, recognizing that there was more progress to be made. We can do that at the same time as pulling away those nuggets relevant today. And it does sound like there are some very relevant parallels to today. But as you were saying,
ah, yeah, I think maybe if I were to share a little bit more too, I think something that really really resonated and stuck with me with Cicero and something that brings me back to him over and over, and I mentioned it a couple times, is the way that he talks about exemplars and role models being
mhm,
truly kind of like uplifting forces, that they do something to us. I think just the way when I was reading him, again, also already recognizing his faults. I remember actually I was like just so struck. I remember the first time I was reading on duties as a 16-year-old or whatever when I found it.
Wow.
Stuff like that, like I said, that this was like an ancient slave owning society, and I was just like, oh my gosh. At the same time, I was so struck by this sense of this person living thousands of years ago who, yes, he was afraid and things were frightening, but he struggled and he tried and he pushed forward, and it was and he cared so much. So that's one of the tragedies of his life, is that he is assassinated, actually, essentially,
Yeah.
as there's the transition from the republic to the empire. But he's remained this kind of hero of republicanism for thousands of years. And so, yeah, I think that the way in which the way he draws inspiration from his exemplars is something I come back to over and over again. And that he actually thinks one of the greatest services you can do is that he says it to become a mirror for fellow citizens. You become a mirror for others to actually see themselves reflected in who they could become. I think that is just such a powerful sense too of that mirror imagery. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Beautiful. And again, in relationship with one another. I love that. So everyone should get the book. We'll put the links in the description on YouTube and across our socials so that you can check out Evan's new book. And our time is flying by, but let's quick touch on your chapter in Leadership for Flourishing. And we'll have the link for that in the description as well. So your chapter in Leadership for Flourishing introduces the concept for leadership for flourishing itself as a virtue, a kind of meta competency. And that was with Veronica Fernandez, another one of our wonderful colleagues. So can you share a little bit about what that means and what it looks like to practice leadership for flourishing the way you would practice courage or justice?
Yeah, amazing. So first off, it was just absolute joy to work with Veronica. So wonderful. Just so many amazing and fun Zoom calls back and forth working on that paper. And it was just like this really cool, like mind meld, because in various ways, I mean, in many ways we came maybe from different traditions, but we were so like laser focused on like what the central message had to be. And I think, as you said, it's really clearly contained there in that something like if we think maybe the last 50 years of leadership studies as well, a very influential movement, an evidence-based movement. It's a good movement. Is the shift toward, in a sense, shifting with much of psychology toward more kind of like competency-based models and evaluation, as opposed to like intelligence testing and things like that, coming out of David McClelland's research in the 1970s. And so in doing that, you can be really clear about the competencies you think really matter for leadership. So things like teamwork and visioning and things like this. But I think what's so clear with, say, like leadership for flourishing, and then maybe even virtues being something like meta competencies, or coming maybe at a level higher, is that intention piece has to be so clear. The idea is that there's recognition that certainly, as I said before, like curiosity and drive and perseverance and courage, even, they can be used toward evil ends. And that's to go back to Burns' ideas that when we're talking leadership, we do have to talk about values. We have to talk about ethics. And so that gets complicated. We have to be able to talk through that and think about what that means. But Burns as well, for example, says that if leadership studies can't make the distinction between a merely effective tyrant like an Adolf Hitler and someone like Martin Luther King and all of the people involved in the civil rights movement, that like leadership studies has gone a really bad way. And so I am very much in agreement with that. And I think that orientation of love and of leadership for flourishing and love for all people and the flourishing of all people as kind of a meta competency that then helps to direct all the other competencies, that helps to direct all the other virtues, was something that we wanted to make sure was just crystal clear in the paper. And I think is just also I hope really relevant too for people navigating just also like, what do I make of this leadership seminar? Well, I hope that it helped you get closer to the good and valuing people and loving others and supporting them. I think that's a good like test for whether or not any of the leadership development you're doing is actually doing what it should.
Beautiful. And speaking of navigating in the real world, I'm curious if you were for our listeners and anybody who's viewing, if you were to suggest just one thing that they could do when they are done listening or watching, listening to or watching this podcast that would help them cultivate their character, cultivate their own leadership, what would that be?
So I would say it's actually one of the very foundational things in our ethics and cultivation of character class that we do with every 11th grader at Culver is to start setting intentions for your character, to set small goals for who you want to become. It's incredibly enlivening, and it's inspiring to yourself. It's uplifting to yourself to take a moment to think, look at what's happening in your week or your day and think about what virtues would go along with it. I would actually recommend, say, like the VIA strengths or another model to give you more language too, but something like, how do I be more courageous this week? How do I be more moderate and take advantage of my resources and my time and my body best this week? How do I show a little bit more wisdom this week? And how do I do that with things like love of learning and curiosity and perspective? I think setting intentions, and we do it in a weekly frame, but if you can do something, you can do it by a day, a week, a month. I think it is one of the best and most transformational practices. And it goes all the way back to the ancients. Also, Benjamin Franklin famously did it. So I offer that up as one thing.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Evan. Our time has absolutely flown by. We're going to have you back. And again, we'll have all the links to connect with Evan, to get his book, to get Leadership for Flourishing as well, in the description on YouTube, as well as links for our Write the Future campaign, where you can get together with others in your local community, work on envisioning the hopeful future and planning concrete action steps to get there. So thanks again, Evan, and we look forward to having you back really soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Brandon. It was just a joy and a pleasure to be here, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. And what's on for the rest of your day?